Have you ever wished you could finish your most important work before lunch and actually have your afternoons free? I know I have. For a long time, my mornings felt busy but not productive. I'd answer emails, jump into meetings, and handle urgent requests, but the real work, the things that mattered, just kept getting pushed later and later. By the end of the day, I was tired and frustrated, with too many things left unfinished. This book is my answer to that problem. Done by Lunch shares a way of working that helps you get your biggest tasks finished before noon, so you can enjoy your afternoons without stress or guilt. It's not about cramming more into your day or becoming a productivity robot. Instead, it's about making simple changes to how you plan your mornings, so you get real results and feel proud of what you've accomplished. Inside, I'll show you how a clear, simple rule, finish by noon, can help you focus, avoid distractions, and actually get things done. You'll learn how to set one clear goal each morning, how to use your best hours for real work, not just checking messages, and how to set up your calendar so you have enough time for what matters. I'll walk you through easy steps and tips that anyone can use, even if you've struggled with focus or motivation before. You don't need fancy tools or complicated systems to use what's in this book. You just need a willingness to try something new and a bit of patience as you build these habits. My hope is that Done by Lunch will help you take back control of your time, finish your days with less stress, and enjoy your afternoons, whether that means tackling new projects, spending time with family, or simply taking a well-earned break. If you're tired of feeling busy but not accomplished, this book is for you. Let's get started and get done by lunch. Chapter 1. Beat Noon. You've been working for 4 hours and you have nothing to show for it. The morning started with good intentions. You opened your laptop, scanned your to-do list, and told yourself today would be different. But then the inbox pulled you in. A Slack message needed a quick reply. A meeting invite demanded a response. Someone asked for your thoughts on a draft, and you spent 20 minutes crafting feedback that could have waited until Thursday. By the time you looked up, it was 11:47. Your calendar showed 3 afternoon meetings stacked back to back, and the one thing you actually needed to finish, the proposal, the analysis, the deck, was still sitting there, untouched, mocking you. This is the pattern. Mornings dissolve into triage. Afternoons get hijacked by other people's agendas. Evenings become cleanup time for the work you should have shipped 8 hours earlier. You look busy. Your calendar is full, your message count is high, but when someone asks what you delivered today, you hesitate. You worked hard, but the output is invisible. The chaos you're living in. Let's name what's actually happening. Your afternoons are a war zone. Meetings multiply, messages arrive in waves, microfires erupt, someone needs a decision, a clarification, a file you can't find. You're reactive, not proactive. You're managing interruptions, not creating value. Your mornings aren't much better. You tell yourself you'll just check email first or get organized before diving in. But inbox triage isn't preparation. It's procrastination dressed up as productivity. You're answering questions that don't matter and postponing work that does. By the time you're ready to focus, your cognitive horsepower is already spent and the day's chaos is closing in. Deliverables slip. Deadlines get soft. Stakeholders stop trusting your estimates because you've trained them to expect delays. Stress compounds. You promise yourself you'll catch up this weekend, but weekends become extensions of the work week and the cycle repeats. You're not lazy. You're trapped in a system that rewards motion over outcomes, busyness over delivery. The worst part? You look productive. Your status updates are detailed. Your chat presence is green. But deep down, you know the truth. Output is invisible and trust is eroding. What winning looks like. Now imagine a different pattern. By noon, you've shipped something real, not made progress on, not almost done with, shipped. A draft sent to a stakeholder. A decision documented and communicated. A section of code committed and reviewed. Something concrete that moves the project forward and gives others what they need to do their part. Your afternoons are suddenly optional. Meetings happen, but they don't derail you. You already delivered. Messages arrive, but they don't create panic. You've already won the day. You can use the afternoon for strategic thinking, learning, or just breathing. The evening is yours. The weekend stays a weekend. Over time, this pattern compounds. Shorter project cycles mean faster feedback loops and accelerated learning. Reliable handoffs mean your team moves the same day instead of waiting until tomorrow. Stakeholders start planning around your delivery cadence because you've built a brand for clarity, speed, and dependability. Opportunities flow to people who ship, and you've become someone who ships consistently, calmly, by noon. The cost of staying stuck. If you don't change the pattern changes you. Chronic reactivity becomes your identity. Decisions get pushed later and later in the day when your judgment is weakest and your energy is lowest. Quality falls because you're always rushing at the end. Your reputation shifts from reliable to tries hard but overpromises. Burnout isn't dramatic. It's the slow accumulation of catch-up cycles and weekend makeups. It's the guilt of knowing you could have shipped on Tuesday but didn't, so now it's Friday and you're still polishing. It's the exhaustion of perpetual motion without visible momentum. Opportunities bypass you. Promotions go to people who deliver, not people who explain why they're still working on it. High-leverage projects get handed to those with a track record of finishing, and your track record says busy but slow. You stay stuck in the same role, doing the same work, wondering why others are moving faster. Your first week, small wins, big shift. This book isn't theory. It's a system you can start tomorrow. In your first week, you'll ship one meaningful outcome by noon on 3 out of 5 days. Not perfect outcomes, shippable ones. You'll define acceptance criteria before 9 each morning so you know exactly when to stop polishing and start sending. You'll protect a 90 to 120-minute focus block where interruptions are banned and deep work happens. And at 12:10 each day, you'll run a 3-minute retrospective. What shipped? What slipped? What do I adjust tomorrow? 3 wins in 5 days might not sound revolutionary, but it is. Most people ship 0 complete outcomes in a week. They make progress on 5 things and finish none. You'll finish 3, and the momentum will be undeniable. The system, 7 moves, 1 goal. The path from chaos to noon delivery has 7 core moves, and they build on each other in a specific order. First, you install the Noon Constraint, a hard public deadline that compresses scope and forces real decisions. Then you shift to outcome-first planning, where you define one shippable deliverable and clear acceptance criteria before you start working. Next, you redesign your calendar into a production line. Deep work, refine, ship, with buffers built in. You enforce single threading, working one high-stakes artifact at a time until it's done. You build a buffer ladder, small-time cushions between steps and a larger one before noon to absorb surprises without derailing delivery. You adopt version-and-handoff practices, shipping a rough draft early for feedback and finishing with a clean handoff note that moves others forward. Finally, you reflect daily to lock in learning and tighten the system. Each move matters. Each move has a reason. Constraint sets direction. Outcome defines the finish line. Calendar creates flow. Single threading maintains velocity. Buffers absorb variance. Versioning accelerates feedback. Reflection turns experience into expertise. Winners ship, losers polish. There are 2 types of people in every organization. Winners design their mornings, commit publicly to a noon outcome, and ship calmly. Losers drift through the morning, hide in busyness, polish forever, and never actually send. Winners measure what they deliver. Losers guess and hope. Winners protect the morning like it's the most valuable real estate in the world, because it is. You get to choose which type you become. The choice isn't about talent or luck, it's about discipline and design. It's about deciding that noon is the line, and everything before noon is sacred territory reserved for creation, not reaction. Your first noon statement. Here's where it starts. Tomorrow morning, before 9, you'll write 1 sentence. Today, by 12:00, I will ship X to Y with Z criteria. X is the deliverable. Y is the person who receives it. Z is the short list of conditions that define done. Then you'll block 3 segments on your calendar. deep work, A, refine, B, and ship, C. You'll announce your noon commitment to one person, a colleague, a manager, anyone who will notice if you don't follow through. You'll set 3 alarms, T60, T30, and T10, so you're never surprised by the deadline. And at noon, you'll ship. No excuses, no extensions, no just one more tweak. At 12:10, you'll log a 3-bullet retrospective. What went well, what slipped, what you'll adjust tomorrow. That's it. Simple, concrete, repeatable. The system works because it's built on forces you can't argue with. Constraints sharpen decisions, mornings offer peak cognitive power, and shrinking the time container kills waste. But knowing the theory won't change your week. Action will. Tomorrow, you'll write your noon statement. You'll protect your morning, you'll ship by noon, and when you do, you'll feel something you haven't felt in a long time: control. But first, you need to understand why noon isn't arbitrary. It's the forcing function that makes everything else possible. The next chapter reveals how a single deadline transforms vague intentions into shippable reality, and why making it public is the difference between trying and delivering. Before we continue, make sure to subscribe to Grow to the Top and activate notifications to receive more self-improvement tips that will supercharge your growth. And make sure to give this video a thumbs up and share it with your friends. It really helps the channel grow. Thank you for your support. Chapter 2, Noon Constraint. The problem with I'll get it done today is that today ends at midnight. You've said it 100 times. You'll finish the report today. You'll send the proposal today. You'll close the loop on that decision today. And technically, you're not lying. You do work on it. You make progress. But when the clock hits 5 p.m., it's still not shipped. When you close your laptop at 7:30, it's still sitting in draft. When midnight rolls around, today becomes tomorrow, and the cycle repeats. The issue isn't effort, it's the container. When you give yourself all day, the work expands to fill all day. Worse, it spills into the next day and the next, because there's always one more thing to add, one more section to polish, one more person to consult. The deadline is soft, so the scope is infinite. You're not shipping, you're iterating toward an imaginary perfect version that never arrives. Here's the truth: you don't need more time. You need less. Specifically, you need a hard stop that forces you to choose what matters and cut what doesn't. You need a line in the sand that says, this ships now, or it doesn't ship at all. That line is noon. Why noon changes everything. Noon isn't random. It's strategic. It sits right in the middle of the workday, which means it's early enough to leverage your sharpest cognitive hours, but late enough to give you a realistic window to produce something real. It's also the natural pivot point in most organizations. Reviews happen after lunch, feedback cycles start mid-afternoon, and downstream teams need inputs to move forward before the day ends. When you commit to shipping by noon, you're not just setting a deadline, you're installing a forcing function that compresses every decision you make that morning. Should you add another section? No time. Should you wait for one more opinion? Can't afford it. Should you polish this paragraph for the 3rd time? Ship it and move on. The constraint doesn't kill quality, it kills indecision. Without a constraint, scope balloons. You start with a simple goal and end with a sprawling mess because there's no pressure to choose. Every idea feels important. Every addition feels justified. But when noon is the cutoff, you're forced to ask a different question. What's the smallest version that delivers value? That question is the antidote to perfectionism. Noon also accelerates starts. When you know the deadline is tight, you can't afford to spend the first hour getting ready. You jump in, you make assumptions, you move. The urgency isn't panic, it's focus, and focus is what turns intention into output. The power of going public. Here's where most people fail. They set the deadline privately. They tell themselves, I'll finish by noon, and then when noon arrives and the work isn't done, they quietly extend the deadline. No one else knows. No one else cares. The commitment was invisible, so breaking it has no cost. That's why you need to make it visible. Not to create pressure, to create accountability. When you announce your noon commitment to a colleague, a manager, or even just one other person, the stakes change. You're no longer negotiating with yourself. You're honoring a public promise. And humans are wired to follow through on public commitments far more reliably than private ones. The announcement doesn't have to be dramatic. A simple message works. Shipping the draft proposal to you by noon today. Or expect the analysis in your inbox by 12. The specificity matters. The visibility matters. The moment you hit send on that message, your brain shifts from I should finish this to I will finish this. Public commitment also transforms how you scope. When someone else is expecting a deliverable at a specific time, you can't afford to overpromise. You trim the scope to what's actually achievable. You focus on the minimal valuable version, the smallest artifact that delivers real value and moves the project forward. Not the perfect version, not the comprehensive version, the version that ships. Scoping to the MVV. The minimal valuable version is your escape hatch from perfectionism. It's the draft that's good enough to get feedback, the analysis that's complete enough to inform a decision, the prototype that's functional enough to test an assumption. It's not lazy, it's strategic, because shipping an MVV by noon beats shipping a masterpiece never. The trick is defining the MVV before you start working. At 8:45, you write down exactly what done looks like. Not finish the proposal, but send a 3-page proposal covering budget, timeline, and key risks. Not analyze the data, but deliver a 1-page summary with 3 insights and 1 recommendation. The more specific the scope, the easier it is to know when to stop. Once you've defined the MVV, you freeze it. No additions, no expansions, no while I'm at it detours. The scope is locked until after you ship. If new ideas emerge, and they will, you capture them in a separate list labeled version 1.1 or afternoon. This isn't about ignoring good ideas, it's about protecting the current outcome from scope creep. Freezing scope feels uncomfortable at first. You'll be tempted to add just one more chart, just one more paragraph, just one more clarification. Resist. The goal isn't to ship everything you could possibly include. The goal is to ship what you committed to ship, on time, every time. Consistency builds trust. Over-delivering once and under-delivering twice builds nothing. The commit pass ritual. At 11:50, you run a final check. Not a polish pass, a commit pass. You're not improving the work. You're confirming it meets the acceptance criteria you set at 8:45. Does it answer the key questions? Does it give the recipient what they need to move forward? Does it meet the MVV standard? If yes, you ship. If no, you make the smallest possible fix and ship anyway. The commit pass takes 5 minutes, not 50. You're not rewriting. You're not second-guessing. You're verifying that the work is shippable and then shipping it. This ritual prevents the classic trap, spending the last hour before the deadline tinkering with details that don't matter while the core deliverable sits unsent. If you realize at 11:50 that you won't make noon, you have 2 options. Option 1, ship what you have with a note explaining what's complete and what's coming next. Option 2, log the slip, document the reason, and adjust tomorrow's plan. What you don't do is silently extend the deadline and pretend it didn't happen. Slips are data. They tell you where your scoping is off or where hidden dependencies are lurking. Use them to get better, not to beat yourself up. The lies you tell yourself. You're going to resist this. Your brain will offer a dozen reasons why noon is unrealistic. Deadlines kill quality. I need more time to think. Stakeholders won't accept rough drafts. Let's dismantle these myths one by one. Deadlines don't kill quality. Fuzzy criteria kill quality. When you don't know what done looks like, you polish forever and ship nothing. When you define clear acceptance criteria, you know exactly when the work is good enough. Quality isn't about perfection. It's about meeting the standard that matters for this version, at this stage, for this audience. You don't need more time to think. You need earlier thinking. The best ideas don't come from staring at a blank screen for 3 hours. They come from starting rough, seeing what emerges, and refining as you go. Thinking happens through doing, not before doing. The Noon Constraint forces you to think faster, which paradoxically produces clearer thinking because you can't afford to overthink. Stakeholders don't want perfection. They want visibility. They'd rather see a rough draft at noon and provide input than wait until 5 p.m. for a polished version that misses the mark. Early visibility prevents late surprises. It shortens feedback loops. It builds trust because you're showing progress, not hiding behind, "I'm still working on it." Making it stick. Tomorrow morning, you'll draft your noon statement by 8:45. One sentence. By 12, I will ship X to Y with Z criteria. X is the deliverable. Y is the recipient. Z is the short list of conditions that define done. You'll announce it to one person. You'll set alarms at T60, T30, and T10 to keep the deadline visible. And at 11:50, you'll run your commit pass and ship. You'll also set a 12:05 buffer, a 5-minute cushion for last-second technical glitches or final confirmations. This isn't an extension, it's insurance. If you need it, you use it. If you don't, you ship early and reclaim the time. Keep a slip reason template ready. If you miss noon, you log it immediately. What slipped, why it slipped, and what you'll adjust tomorrow. No guilt, no drama, just data. Over time, the pattern will reveal where your scoping is weak or where dependencies are hiding. You'll get better at estimating, better at cutting scope, and better at shipping. In your first week, hitting noon 3 out of 5 days is a win. 4 out of 5 is excellent. 5 out of 5 means you've cracked the code, and downstream work is starting the same day because you're reliably delivering when you say you will. What breaks and how to fix it? Overscoping will be your first enemy. You'll define an MVV and then unconsciously expand it as you work. The fix is simple. Recut to the original MVV and defer everything else to the 12:15 list. Ruthlessly protect the scope you committed to. Perfectionism will be your second enemy. You'll want to polish one more time, tweak one more sentence, adjust one more chart. The fix is the commit pass ritual. One final check, then ship. No exceptions. Hidden dependencies will ambush you. You'll realize at 10:30 that you need input from someone who isn't responding. The fix is front-loading clarifications. At 8:30, send short, specific questions with yes-no prompts and a default decision. Need your take on X by 11. If I don't hear back, I'll proceed with Y. This keeps you moving even when others are slow. Social pressure to delay will test you. Someone will ask for just one more thing at 11:45. The fix is your public commitment and your track record. Point to your noon statement. Show that you've shipped on time for 3 days straight. Offer to add their request to version 1.1, which you'll tackle after lunch. Boundaries backed by consistency are hard to argue with. The Noon Constraint isn't about speed for speed's sake. It's about designing a system where shipping becomes the default, not the exception. It's about building a reputation for reliability that opens doors and creates leverage. And it starts with a single decision. Noon is the line, and everything before noon is sacred. But even with a hard deadline, you'll waste the morning if you don't know how to protect it. The next chapter reveals how to turn your freshest hours into a fortress, where deep work happens, distractions die, and real progress becomes inevitable. Chapter 3, Morning Leverage. You have 4 hours of genius every day, and you're spending them on email. Not literally 4 hours of email, though some weeks it feels that way. But those first few hours after you start working, that's when your brain is sharpest. Your working memory is fresh. Your ability to hold complex ideas in your head and manipulate them is at its peak. Your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for planning, reasoning, and problem solving, is fully online and ready to do the hardest work you'll face all day. And what do most people do with this cognitive gold? They scroll, they triage, they respond to messages that could wait until Thursday. They attend meetings that could have been an email. They get organized and catch up and clear the decks, all code for avoiding the one thing that actually matters, creating something that ships. By the time they're ready to focus, it's 11 a.m. Their mental energy is half spent. The inbox has trained them to be reactive. The world is awake and demanding attention, and the window for deep, uninterrupted work has closed. Here's the brutal truth. If you're not protecting your morning, you're not serious about shipping by noon. The constraint is useless without the leverage, and the leverage is your morning, guarded, isolated, and weaponized for output. The fortress you need to build. Think of your morning as a fortress under siege. The enemy isn't a person, it's distraction. Messages, notifications, browser tabs, the urge to check just one thing. Each interruption feels small, a ping here, a quick reply there. But interruptions aren't additive, they're multiplicative. Every time you switch contexts, you pay a tax. Your brain has to unload what it was working on, load the new task, process it, then reload the original task when you return. That tax isn't seconds, it's minutes, and it compounds. Cognitive science is clear on this. Context switching degrades both performance and memory. You're not just slower when you multitask, you're worse. The quality of your thinking drops. The depth of your analysis shrinks. The creativity you need to solve hard problems evaporates because creativity requires sustained attention, and sustained attention requires isolation. So you build fire breaks, not metaphorical ones, literal ones. You close every tab except the one you need. You silence every notification except the ones that matter. You put your phone face down in another room. You activate Do Not Disturb. You full screen the single app you're working in so there's nothing else to look at, nothing else to click, nothing else to pull your attention away. This isn't about willpower. Willpower is a losing strategy because willpower depletes. This is about design. You're designing an environment where distraction is impossible and focus is the only option. You're removing the choice to switch so your brain stops asking the question. Energy matching, hardest work first. Your morning hours aren't just quieter, they're stronger. Biologically, you're primed for complex work early in the day. Your cortisol levels are higher, which sounds bad but isn't. Cortisol sharpens focus and boosts alertness. Your glucose metabolism is optimized. Your decision-making capacity is at its peak. This is when you should be doing the hardest, most cognitively demanding work you have. Instead, most people do the opposite. They start with easy tasks to warm up. They clear low-priority messages to feel productive. They attend status meetings to stay aligned. And by the time they're ready to tackle the hard stuff, their cognitive tank is half empty and the day is half gone. Energy matching is simple. Align task difficulty with biological readiness. Morning is for creation, analysis, and decision-making. Afternoon is for communication, coordination, and admin. You don't check email until noon because email is shallow work, and shallow work doesn't deserve your sharpest hours. You don't attend non-critical meetings before noon because meetings are reactive and mornings are for proactive output. This feels counterintuitive at first. Your brain will scream that you need to stay on top of things and be responsive. But that's anxiety talking, not strategy. The inbox will still be there at 12:15. The messages will still get answered. The difference is that by then, you'll have already shipped something real. You'll have already won the day. The zero inbox until noon discipline. Here's the rule. No inbox, no chat, no messages until noon. Not just a quick check, not only the urgent ones. Zero. The inbox is a black hole. Once you open it, it pulls you in. One message leads to another. One question triggers a thread. One quick reply turns into 20 minutes of back and forth that could have happened asynchronously. The discipline isn't about ignoring people, it's about batching communication so it doesn't fragment your focus. When you batch, you handle 10 messages in 15 minutes. When you scatter, those same 10 messages eat 90 minutes because every switch costs you reactivation time. Batching is efficient. Scattering is expensive. But what about emergencies? What if someone really needs you? Here's the fix. Set up VIP-only alerts. Identify the 3 to 5 people whose messages genuinely can't wait. Your manager, a key client, a critical teammate, and allow their notifications through. Everyone else gets batched. If it's truly urgent, they'll find another way to reach you. If it's not, it can wait until 12:15. This boundary will make you uncomfortable at first. You'll feel like you're being unresponsive. You'll worry that people will think you're ignoring them. But here's what actually happens. You ship by noon, consistently, and people start planning around your reliability. They learn that you're heads down until midday and that you'll respond after. And because you're delivering real output every day, they trust you more, not less. Building your focus block. Tomorrow morning, you'll block 90 to 120 minutes for deep work. Not try to find time. Block it. Put it on your calendar with a clear title: Deep Work, Ship Proposal, or Focus Block Analysis Draft. Make it visible. Make it non-negotiable. Before you start, you'll activate focus mode. Do not disturb on. One app full screen. One window open. Pre-open only the files you need for the one outcome you're shipping. If you need a document, a spreadsheet, and a browser tab for research, open those 3 things and close everything else. No email client, no chat app, no news sites, just the tools required for the task. Place a sticky note somewhere visible. Ship before scroll. This is your reminder that creation comes before consumption. You don't earn the right to check messages until you've made progress on the thing that matters. Keep a now list, a single piece of paper or a small text file with one step written on it. Not your entire to-do list, not the project plan, just the next physical action. Draft Section 2. Build the financial model. Write the executive summary. One step. When you finish it, you write the next one. The now list keeps you from drifting into planning mode when you should be in execution mode. At the midpoint of your focus block, around 45 minutes in, pause for 60 seconds. Ask yourself 3 questions: continue, cut, or clarify. Are you on track to finish this section by the end of the block? If yes, continue. If no, should you cut scope to something smaller or clarify what done actually means? This micro checkpoint prevents you from spending 90 minutes on the wrong thing. The tricks that make it stick. Pre-opening files matters more than you think. When you sit down and have to hunt for the document, find the link, remember the password, your brain is already switching contexts before you've even started. Pre-open everything the night before or first thing in the morning, then close all other windows. You want 0 friction between start timer and start working. Sound matters too. If you work better with ambient noise, use it. If you need silence, enforce it, but no lyrics. Lyrics activate the language processing parts of your brain, which are the same parts you need for writing, analyzing, and reasoning. Instrumental music or white noise is fine. Podcasts and songs with words are focus killers. If your energy dips mid-block, don't push through. Reset. Stand up, walk to another room, do 10 push-ups. Change your physical state for 2 minutes, then return. A micro-movement reset is faster and more effective than grinding through fatigue, and it preserves the quality of your output. When it works, when it breaks. In your first week, one solid 60 to 90-minute deep block daily is a win. You'll feel the difference immediately. You'll make visible progress. You'll hit 10:30 and realize you've already accomplished more than most people do in an entire afternoon. Excellent looks like 2 blocks totaling 120 minutes or more. You'll run a morning block, take a short break, then run a second block or a refine session. By 10:30, you'll have a draft. By 11:30, you'll be polishing. By 11:50, you'll be shipping. Best looks like 2 blocks plus an 11:30 commit pass, and you're shipping by 11:50 consistently. At this level, the system is automatic. You're not fighting for focus, you're operating in it. And your reputation for reliability is compounding. But things will break. Early pings will slip through your fire breaks. You'll get a message from someone who isn't on your VIP list but feels urgent. The fix is discipline. Batch it. Add it to your 12:15 reply queue and keep working. If it's genuinely critical, they'll escalate through another channel. If it's not, it can wait 90 minutes. Energy dips will hit you. Some mornings, you'll sit down ready to work and find your brain foggy. The fix is a micro-movement reset or switching to a 15-minute micro-sprint. Instead of trying to power through a 90-minute block, commit to just 15 minutes on the smallest possible step. Often, momentum builds and you'll keep going. If not, you've still made progress. Rabbit holes will tempt you. You'll start researching one point, and suddenly it's 40 minutes later and you're 6 tabs deep into a tangent. The fix is time boxing. Set a 10-minute timer for research. When it rings, capture what you found and move on. Create an after 12:15 parking lot for interesting detours that don't serve the current outcome. Anxiety will urge you to check the inbox. You'll feel the pull, the itch, the worry that something important is waiting. The fix is a 2-minute breathing drill. Close your eyes. Breathe in for 4 counts. Hold for 4. Out for 4. Repeat 5 times. Then restart your timer and get back to work. The inbox will still be there. The urgent thing you're imagining is almost never as urgent as your brain claims. The morning you deserve. Protecting your morning isn't selfish. It's strategic. It's the difference between spending 4 hours reacting to other people's priorities and spending 4 hours advancing your own. It's the difference between looking busy and being effective. It's the difference between hoping you'll finish by noon and knowing you will. The fortress you build around your morning hours is the foundation of everything else in this system. The noon constraint sets the deadline. The outcome defines the target. But without protected time to actually do the work, none of it matters. Tomorrow, you'll block your focus time. You'll activate your fire breaks. You'll ship before you scroll. And by 10:30, you'll have made more progress than most people make in a week. But even with a protected morning and a hard deadline, you'll still waste hours if you don't know what you're actually building. The next chapter reveals the one question that separates vague intentions from shippable outcomes, and why answering it before 9 a.m. changes everything. Chapter 4, Outcome First. You can't finish what you never defined. Most mornings start with good intentions and vague targets. Work on the proposal. Make progress on the analysis. Move the project forward. These aren't outcomes, they're directions. And directions without destinations lead to wandering. You spend 2 hours working on something, and when someone asks what you accomplished, you hesitate. You made progress, sure, but did you finish anything? Can you point to a concrete artifact and say, this is done? The answer is usually no, because work on is infinite. Make progress has no finish line. Move forward could mean anything from opening a document to completing an entire section. Without a clear definition of done, you'll polish forever, second-guess endlessly, and ship never. Here's the shift that changes everything. Before you start working, you decide exactly what shipped looks like. Not mostly done or almost there. Shipped, sent, delivered. Out of your hands and into someone else's. And you define it so precisely that a stranger could look at your work and grade it as pass or fail with zero ambiguity. That's what outcome first means. The outcome isn't the last thing you think about, it's the first. It's the lens through which every decision gets made. It's the finish line that tells you when to stop polishing and start shipping. The trap of vague goals. Vague goals are productivity poison. They waste your sharpest hours because you spend them figuring out what you're supposed to be doing instead of actually doing it. You sit down to work on the deck, and immediately you're faced with a dozen micro decisions. Which section first? How much detail? What format? Should you include that extra chart? What about the appendix? Each decision costs mental energy. Each choice creates friction. And because the goal is fuzzy, there's no clear answer. So you dither. You start one section, switch to another, circle back to the first. You add a slide, delete it, add it again. You're moving, but you're not progressing. And when noon arrives, you've burned 3 hours and have nothing shippable to show for it. Vague goals also invite perfectionism. When you don't know what good enough looks like, you default to as good as possible. And as good as possible is a moving target that recedes as you approach it. There's always one more tweak, one more revision, one more round of polish. You're not shipping, you're iterating toward an imaginary standard that exists only in your head. Clear acceptance criteria kill this trap. When you define exactly what done means before you start, you eliminate the guesswork. You know what to include and what to cut. You know when to stop, and you know the moment you cross the finish line because the criteria are binary. Either you met them or you didn't. Defining the finish line. By 9 a.m., you need one sentence written down. By 12, deliver X to Y with Z criteria. X is the specific deliverable, Y is the person receiving it, Z is the short list of conditions that define done. This isn't a wish, it's a contract with yourself. X must be concrete and shippable, not work on the proposal, but send a 3-page proposal. Not analyze the data, but deliver a 1-page summary with 3 key insights. Not update the roadmap, but share a revised timeline with milestones and owners. The more specific the deliverable, the less room for drift. I must be a real person with a name, not the team or stakeholders or whoever needs it, a specific individual who will receive the work and do something with it. Naming the recipient forces you to think about what they actually need, which naturally trims scope. You're not building a monument, you're solving a problem for a human. Z is your acceptance criteria, the conditions that must be true for the work to qualify as done. Keep it to 5 or fewer. More than 5 and you're gold plating. Fewer than 3 and you're probably being too vague. Each criterion should be verifiable by someone else. Not make it good, but include budget, timeline, and key risks. Not analyze thoroughly, but identify top 3 drivers and recommend one action. The criteria aren't aspirational, they're minimal. They define the smallest version that delivers real value. If you meet all 5 criteria, you ship. If you exceed them, great, but you still ship at noon. The extras go into version 1.1, which you tackle after lunch if time permits. The 3-step starter. Once you've defined the outcome, you need a starting point, not a detailed project plan. A simple sequence of 3 sub-steps that gets you from blank page to shippable draft. 3 is the magic number. Fewer than 3 and you're oversimplifying. More than 3 and you're over-planning. Each sub-step should be a verb plus an object. Draft executive summary. Build financial model. Edit for clarity. Strong verbs create momentum because they're actionable. Weak verbs like think about or consider create stalling because they're not. You write the 3 steps, then you start immediately on step 1. No further planning, no additional prep. You've defined the outcome, you've sketched the path, and now you execute. The planning happens through doing, not before doing. You'll adjust as you go, but you can't adjust until you start. This is where implementation intentions come in. Research shows that pre-committing to a specific action at a specific time dramatically increases follow-through. So you write, at 8:30, I start drafting section 1. Not, I'll try to start around 8:30, or I should probably begin soon. A precise trigger and a precise action. When the clock hits 8:30, you don't decide whether to start. You just start. The grading rubric you need. Here's the test. Could a stranger grade your work as done or not done based solely on your acceptance criteria? If the answer is no, your criteria are too vague. If the answer is yes, you've built a finish line that actually works. Let's say your outcome is, by 12, send a proposal to Sarah covering budget, timeline, and risks. Your grading rubric might be, it's done when the document includes a total cost estimate, a 3-month timeline with milestones, and a list of the top 3 risks with mitigation plans. A stranger could read that proposal and check each box. Budget estimate, yes or no. Timeline with milestones, yes or no. Top 3 risks, yes or no. Binary, clear, shippable. Compare that to send a good proposal to Sarah. What's good? Who decides? When do you stop improving it? The ambiguity creates an open loop that your brain will obsess over until you either ship in panic or miss the deadline entirely. The grading rubric also helps you identify your reviewer in advance. Who's going to look at this work and provide feedback? Naming them before you start lets you tailor the output to their needs and ask targeted questions when you ship. Not, what do you think, but does the budget estimate align with your expectations? And are these the right risks to highlight? Specific questions get specific answers. Vague questions get vague feedback that doesn't help you improve. The lies your brain tells you. Your brain will resist this level of specificity. It will tell you that you need a perfect plan before you can define the outcome. You don't. You need a precise finish line. The plan emerges as you work. Trying to map every detail up front is procrastination disguised as preparation. Your brain will also tell you that you'll know the outcome when you see it. You won't. "I'll know it when I see it" is how you end up polishing for 3 hours and shipping nothing. You need to decide what done looks like before you start, not after you've already invested time and emotional energy. And your brain will insist that more detail equals more control. It doesn't. Excess detail slows starts because you're trying to anticipate every scenario instead of responding to reality as it unfolds. The outcome and criteria give you direction. The 3 substeps give you a starting point. Everything else is noise. Making it operational. Tomorrow morning, before 9 a.m., you'll write your outcome statement. By 12, deliver X to Y with Z criteria. You'll list your 3 substeps. You'll draft your grading rubric, and you'll identify your reviewer and the 2 questions you'll ask when you ship. Then you'll pre-name your working file with the date and Noon outcome in the title. 2025-11-03 Noon Outcome Proposal Draft. This does 2 things. First, it makes the deadline visible every time you glance at the file. Second, it signals to anyone who might see your screen that you're on a tight timeline and shouldn't be interrupted. Use strong verbs throughout. Not think about the budget, but calculate total cost. Not consider the timeline, but map milestones. Verbs create action. Nouns create contemplation. You need action. Keep your criteria count at 5 or fewer. If you find yourself listing a 6th criterion, stop and ask, is this truly necessary for version 1, or is this nice to have? Nice to haves go on the version 1.1 list. Necessary items stay. This discipline prevents scope creep before it starts. When it works, when it breaks. Good looks like one clear outcome daily with criteria listed. You're no longer wandering through your morning wondering what to work on, you know, and that clarity accelerates everything. Excellent looks like outcome plus criteria plus named reviewer agreed by 9 a.m. You've not only defined what you're shipping, you've aligned with the person who's receiving it. There are no surprises at noon. They're expecting it. They know what to look for. The handoff is clean. Best looks like the outcome aligned the day prior and the feedback pathway pre-arranged. You're not scrambling at 8:45 to figure out what to build. You decided yesterday. You slept on it. You woke up knowing exactly what to do. And when you ship at noon, the reviewer is ready to respond because you set expectations in advance. But things will break. Ambiguity will stall you. You'll sit down at 8:30 and realize you're not actually sure what the deliverable should include. The fix is a 5-minute scope ping. Message the reviewer, confirming the proposal should cover budget, timeline, and risks. Anything else critical? If they respond, great. If they don't, by 9, proceed with your best assumptions and document them in the handoff note. Criteria creep will tempt you. Mid-morning, you'll think of something else that would make the work better. The fix is freezing version 1 criteria. Write the new idea down, label it version 1.1, and keep working on the original scope. You can add it after you ship if time permits, but you don't let it delay the noon deadline. Your reviewer might be unavailable. You'll send the scope ping and get no response. The fix is pre-selecting a backup reviewer or defaulting to your stated assumptions. If I don't hear back by 9, I'll proceed assuming we need budget and timeline only. This keeps you moving even when others are slow. Analysis paralysis will freeze you. You'll stare at the outcome statement and feel overwhelmed by all the possible approaches. The fix is enforcing the 3 substeps max rule. Pick the simplest path. Start the timer. Begin. You'll course correct as you go, but you can't correct until you're in motion. The clarity that compounds. Outcome-first planning isn't just about today. It's about building a habit of precision that makes every future day easier. When you define outcomes clearly, you train your brain to think in terms of finish lines instead of endless iteration. You stop confusing motion with progress. You stop hiding behind "I'm working on it" and start delivering "here it is." That shift changes how others see you. You become the person who ships, the person who defines scope tightly and hits deadlines consistently, the person who doesn't need 3 reminders or 2 extensions, and that reputation opens doors. Tomorrow, you'll write your outcome statement before 9 a.m. You'll define your criteria, you'll name your reviewer, and you'll know, with zero ambiguity, what done looks like. But even with a clear outcome and protected morning hours, you'll still miss noon if your calendar is working against you. The next chapter reveals how to turn your schedule from a chaotic mess into a precision instrument, one that guarantees delivery, not just intention. Chapter 5, Calendar Design. Your calendar is lying to you. Look at it right now. What do you see? Probably a patchwork of meetings, reminders, and vague blocks labeled focus time that you've already sacrificed twice this week. Maybe a few optimistic entries like work on project that span 2 hours but never actually happen because something always comes up. Your calendar looks full, which makes you feel productive. But if you're honest, it's not a plan, it's a wish list. Here's the problem. Most calendars are museums, not factories. They record what happened or what might happen, but they don't manufacture output. They're passive. They react to incoming requests instead of protecting what matters. Someone sends a meeting invite and you accept it because there's technically a gap in your schedule. Another request arrives and you squeeze it in. By the end of the week, your calendar is a jigsaw puzzle of other people's priorities, and your own work happens in the cracks, if it happens at all. The shift you need is simple but radical. Your calendar isn't a record, it's a production line. And like any production line, it needs to be designed for one thing: output. Not activity, not availability, output. The conveyor belt you're building. Think of a factory floor. Raw materials enter at one end. They move through a series of stations: cutting, assembly, quality check, packaging. At the other end, finished products roll out, ready to ship. The sequence is deliberate. The timing is precise. Nothing moves backward, nothing stalls. The system is designed to guarantee delivery. Your morning needs the same structure. You're not hoping to finish by noon, you're engineering it. And the tool that makes it happen is your calendar, redesigned as a 3-stage conveyor belt: deep work, refine, ship. Deep work is where creation happens. This is your longest block, 60 to 90 minutes, where you draft, build, analyze, or design. It's protected time with zero interruptions, and it happens first when your cognitive horsepower is highest. You're not working on something. You're producing a rough version that's complete enough to refine. Refine is where you tighten. 30 to 45 minutes to review what you created, check it against your acceptance criteria, and polish the edges. Not endless revision, targeted improvement. You're asking, does this meet the standard I defined at 9 a.m.? If yes, you move to the next stage. If no, you make the smallest fix that gets you to yes. Ship is where you close the loop. 15 to 20 minutes to run a final commit pass, attach the handoff note, and send. No second guessing, no last-minute additions. You verify that the work is shippable, then you ship it. The conveyor belt doesn't stop at the packaging station. It delivers. Between each stage, you build in micro-buffers. 5 to 10 minutes to reset, grab water, or handle a quick message. These aren't wasted time, they're shock absorbers. They prevent one stage from bleeding into the next and give you breathing room if something takes slightly longer than planned. And before noon, you install a macro buffer. 20 to 30 minutes of contingency time for the unexpected, a dependency that took longer to resolve, a scope question that needed clarification, a technical glitch. The macro buffer absorbs variance so the deadline stays intact. The meeting rule that changes everything. Here's the non-negotiable. Morning meetings must unblock the outcome or they move to the afternoon. Not might be useful. Not good to stay aligned. Unblock. As in, you literally cannot ship without the information or decision this meeting will provide. Most meetings don't pass this test. Status updates? Those can happen asynchronously or afternoon. Brainstorming sessions? Schedule them for 2 p.m. Weekly syncs? Move them to Thursday afternoon. If the meeting doesn't directly remove an obstacle from your path to shipping, it doesn't belong in your morning. This feels harsh at first. You'll worry about seeming uncooperative or unavailable. But here's what actually happens. When you consistently ship by noon, people start respecting your morning blocks because they see the results. They learn that you're heads down until 12:15 and they plan around it. And because you're delivering reliable output, they trust you more, not less. When someone sends a morning meeting invite, you have a script. I'm heads down on a noon deliverable. Can we move this to 2 p.m., or is there a specific blocker I can help resolve before then? Most of the time, they'll move it. Occasionally, they'll identify a real blocker, and you'll take the meeting because it actually unblocks your work. Either way, you're protecting the production line. The 3 blocks you'll build tomorrow. Tomorrow morning, you'll open your calendar and block 3 segments. Block A is deep work. You'll label it with a verb and the artifact, draft proposal section 2, or build financial model. Not work on proposal. That's vague. Draft section 2 is specific. You know when it's done. Block A runs for 60 to 90 minutes, starting as early as your schedule allows. If you can start at 8 a.m., start at 8 a.m. If 8:30 is more realistic, start then. The key is that it happens before the world fully wakes up, before the meeting requests start flooding in, before your inbox becomes a battleground. After Block A, you insert a 5 to 10 minute microbuffer. This is your reset. Stand up, stretch, check for any critical messages that slipped through your VIP filter. But don't dive into the inbox. Don't start a new task. Just reset and prepare for Block B. Block B is refine. 30 to 45 minutes to review, tighten, and polish. You're checking your work against the acceptance criteria you defined at 9 a.m. You're asking targeted questions. Does this cover budget, timeline, and risks? Are the 3 insights clear? Is the recommendation actionable? If the answer is yes across the board, you're done refining. If not, you make the minimum viable fix and move on. Another microbuffer follows Block B, 5 to 10 minutes. Same purpose, reset, breathe, prepare for the final stage. Block C is ship. 15 to 20 minutes to run your commit pass, write the handoff note, and send. You're not adding new content. You're verifying that what you built is shippable and then shipping it. The handoff note is simple. Here's the proposal covering budget, timeline, and risks. 2 questions. Does the budget align with your expectations? Are these the right risks to highlight? Need your input by 2 p.m. if possible. Before noon, you've built in a macro buffer, 20 to 30 minutes of open time to handle anything that didn't fit the plan, a dependency that took longer, a clarification that required a quick call, a technical issue. If nothing breaks, you use this time for light polish or to get a head start on an afternoon task. If something does break, the buffer absorbs it without pushing your ship time past noon. The discipline of naming and color. Titles matter. When you label a calendar block focus time, your brain doesn't know what that means. When you label it draft executive summary, your brain knows exactly what to do when the block starts. Verbs create action. Nouns create contemplation. Use verbs. Color coding helps too. Pick one color for your production blocks. Deep work, refine, ship, and make them visually distinct from everything else on your calendar. When you glance at your week, you should immediately see the protected time. If your calendar is a rainbow of different colors with no pattern, it's noise. If your mornings are a consistent block of one color, it's a signal. This is sacred. Mute other calendars during your morning blocks. If you're on a team calendar or a shared schedule, those events will clutter your view and create the illusion of conflict. Create a personal focus calendar, invite only yourself, and use that for your production blocks. Other people's meetings can stay visible in the afternoon, but your morning belongs to you. The decision checkpoint that saves you. At 90 minutes before noon, around 10:30 if you're shipping at 12, you run a 60-second decision checkpoint. You ask 3 questions. Am I on track to meet the acceptance criteria? Is there scope creep I need to cut? Do I need to adjust the plan? This checkpoint is your safety valve. If you're on track, you continue. If you've drifted into gold plating, you cut the extras and refocus on the MVV. If you've hit an unexpected blocker, you make a fast decision. Can I resolve this in the remaining time, or do I need to ship a partial version and document what's missing? The checkpoint prevents the classic mistake, realizing at 11:55 that you're not going to make it, and then either scrambling in panic or quietly extending the deadline. At 10:30, you still have time to course correct. At 11:55, you don't. The template that becomes automatic. Here's the unlock. Once you've designed this calendar structure for one day, you duplicate it across the week. Monday through Friday, the template is the same. Block A, microbuffer, Block B, microbuffer, Block C, macrobuffer, ship. The only thing that changes is the artifact in Block A. Monday is the proposal, Tuesday is the analysis, Wednesday is the roadmap update. This repetition is what makes the system automatic. You're not redesigning your day every morning, you're executing a proven template. Your brain stops asking, "What should I do now?" and starts asking, "What's the next step in the sequence?" Decision fatigue drops, execution speed rises. Over time, the template becomes invisible. You don't think about it, you just follow it. And because you're following it, you're shipping, consistently, predictably, by noon. When the system breaks. Morning hijacks will happen. Someone will schedule an urgent meeting at 9 a.m. The fix is the unblocking only rule. Ask, does this meeting remove a blocker from my noon deliverable? If yes, take it. If no, offer an afternoon alternative. Most requests fold when you apply this filter. Blocks will overrun. You'll plan 60 minutes for deep work and realize at the 50-minute mark that you need another 30. The fix is reducing scope, not extending time. Ask, what's the smallest version that meets the acceptance criteria? Cut everything else. If you consistently overrun, add a 15% buffer budget to all your morning blocks. Instead of 60 minutes, block 70. The extra cushion absorbs variance without breaking the system. Calendar collisions will create chaos. You'll have 3 different calendars showing conflicting events, and you won't know what's real. The fix is the personal focus calendar, one source of truth for your production blocks. Everything else is secondary. The factory you're running. Your calendar isn't a suggestion, it's a commitment. When you block deep work from 8:30 to 10, you're not hoping to work during that time. You're guaranteeing it. When you block ship from 11:30 to 11:50, you're not planning to send, you're sending. This shift from passive to active, from record to system, is what separates people who ship from people who try. The calendar becomes the forcing function that turns intention into delivery, and delivery, repeated daily, becomes your identity. Tomorrow, you'll build your 3-stage conveyor belt. You'll protect it with the unblocking only rule. You'll run your decision checkpoint at T90, and you'll ship by noon because the system guarantees it. But even with a perfect calendar and a clear outcome, you'll still derail if you're juggling 5 things at once. The next chapter reveals the one discipline that multiplies speed and slashes stress, and why most people never learn it. Chapter 6, Single Thread. You have 5 tabs open, 3 documents in progress, and 0 things finished. Right now, somewhere on your screen, there's a proposal you started Monday. Next to it, an analysis you began Tuesday. In another window, slides from Wednesday, a spreadsheet from this morning, an email draft you'll get back to later. Each one is real work. Each one matters, and none of them are done. This is the trap of parallel processing. You tell yourself you're being efficient, keeping multiple projects moving, staying flexible, maximizing your options. But what you're actually doing is spreading your cognitive load across 5 fronts and making 0 progress on any of them. Every time you switch from the proposal to the analysis, your brain pays a tax. It has to unload the context of the proposal, load the context of the analysis, reorient to where you left off, and rebuild momentum. That tax isn't trivial. It's 20 to 40% of your throughput, gone. You're not multitasking, you're thrashing. And thrashing doesn't just slow you down, it guarantees you'll miss noon. The hidden cost of switching. Here's what most people don't realize. The cost of context switching isn't just the time it takes to toggle between tasks, it's the reactivation overhead. Every time you reopen a document, your working memory has to reload the mental model you built the last time you worked on it. What was I trying to say here? What's the next logical step? Where was I going with this argument? That reloading takes minutes, not seconds. And if you've switched away multiple times, the model degrades. You forget the nuance. You lose the thread. You end up rereading the same paragraph 3 times just to remember what you were thinking. The work that should have taken 60 focused minutes now takes 2 hours of fragmented effort, and the quality is worse because you never achieved deep immersion. The research is clear. People who work on one thing at a time finish faster and produce better output than people who juggle multiple things. Not because they're smarter or more talented, because they're not paying the switch tax. Their cognitive resources are concentrated on a single problem, which means they see connections faster, make decisions quicker, and hit flow states that parallel processors never reach. Single threading isn't about rigidity, it's about physics. Your brain is a serial processor pretending to be parallel. When you force it to juggle, it doesn't juggle, it switches rapidly and loses efficiency with every toggle. When you let it focus on one thread, it accelerates. The one artifact rule. Tomorrow morning, you'll enforce a simple rule: one active artifact until milestone or timer. Not one project, one artifact. The specific document, spreadsheet, deck, or file you're building. Everything else stays closed, not minimized, closed. This feels uncomfortable at first. What if something urgent comes up? What if you get stuck and need to pivot? What if you remember something important for the other project? Your brain will generate a dozen reasons why you need to keep options open. Ignore them. Those aren't reasons. They're rationalizations for avoiding the discomfort of commitment. The one artifact rule forces you to finish what you start. When the proposal is the only thing on your screen, you can't drift to the analysis when the proposal gets hard. You have to push through. And pushing through is how you build momentum. Momentum is how you reach completion. Completion is how you ship by noon. You'll also enforce a WIP limit, work in progress limit, maximum one active artifact in the morning. If you're drafting the proposal, the analysis waits. If you're building the model, the slides wait. This isn't about ignoring other work. It's about sequencing it. You finish one thing, then start the next. Serial completion beats parallel stalling every time. The current thread card. Visibility matters. When your status is invisible, your brain treats every task as equally urgent. When your status is visible, your brain knows what to ignore and what to prioritize. That's why you'll create a current thread card, a simple on-screen indicator that shows exactly what you're working on and what the next step is. The format is dead simple. Now, artifact, next step, verb, object. For example, now, proposal draft, next step, write budget section. Or, now, financial model, next step, validate assumptions. The card sits somewhere you can always see it: a sticky note on your monitor, a text file pinned to the top of your screen, a status line in your task manager. The card does 2 things. First, it keeps you honest. When you're tempted to switch to something else, you see the card and remember, this is the thread. Finish the step, then decide. Second, it communicates to others. If someone walks by your desk or sees your screen share, they know your head's down on a specific deliverable. It's a social signal that says, I'm not available for drive-bys right now. You'll also update your chat status or email auto-reply. Single threading, reply after 12:15. This isn't rude, it's professional. You're protecting the work that matters so you can deliver on time. People respect boundaries when those boundaries are clear and backed by consistent results. The 50-minute focus lock. Once you've identified your thread and set your status, you full screen the working app. If you're drafting in a word processor, that's the only app visible. If you're building a model in a spreadsheet, same rule. Close every other tab, close every other window, remove every possible escape route. Then you set a 50-minute timer, not an hour, 50 minutes. The extra 10 minutes of buffer gives you a natural stopping point before the hour mark, which prevents the just 5 more minutes trap that turns into 20. When the timer starts, you do not switch. Not for email, not for messages, not for a quick check of anything. The thread is the thread until the bell rings. At the 50-minute mark, You log your progress in one sentence. Completed budget section. Built revenue model through Q3. Drafted executive summary. Then you make a decision. Continue on this thread or park it and move to the next stage. If you're in the middle of a thought and momentum is strong, reset the timer for another 50 minutes. If you've hit a natural stopping point, park the thread and transition to refine or ship. Parking doesn't mean abandoning. It means documenting where you are so you can pick it up later without reactivation overhead. You write one sentence. Next, add risk mitigation to section 3. When you return, whether that's in 10 minutes or tomorrow, you know exactly where to start. No rereading, no reorienting, just execution. The lies you tell yourself about multitasking. Your brain will resist single threading because it's been trained to believe that multitasking is a skill. It's not. Multitasking is a myth. What you call multitasking is actually rapid task switching, and every switch costs you time and quality. The people who claim they're good at multitasking are good at losing minutes they don't measure. You'll also tell yourself that if you don't respond to messages immediately, you'll block others. But planned checkpoints unblock faster than reactive interruptions. When you batch communication at 11:55 and send a comprehensive handoff note, you give people everything they need in one shot. When you respond to pings as they arrive, you give them fragments spread across the morning, and they end up waiting longer for the full picture. And you'll convince yourself that juggling multiple threads shows agility. It doesn't. It shows indecision and fear of finishing. Agility is the ability to pivot when new information arrives. Single threading is the discipline to finish what you started before pivoting. The two aren't in conflict. Single threading enables real agility because you're not carrying cognitive debt from 5 half-finished tasks. Making it operational. Tomorrow morning, you'll write your current thread card before you start working. Now, artifact, next step, verb object. You'll close every tab and window except the one you need. You'll full screen the working app. You'll set your 50-minute timer, and you'll work the thread until the bell rings. If attention drifts mid-session, you shrink the commitment. Instead of 50 minutes, set a 15-minute microsprint on the smallest viable step. Draft opening paragraph. Calculate Q1 revenue. List top 3 risks. Tiny steps build momentum. Momentum overcomes friction. Once you're moving, you can extend the sprint. If you hit friction, a section that's harder than expected, a decision you're not ready to make, break the task into 5-minute starter steps. Not write the budget section, but list the 3 cost categories. Not build the model, but set up the column headers. Starter steps lower the activation energy. Once you've started, continuing is easier than stopping. When someone tries to interrupt, you point to your status. I'm single threading until noon. Can we sync at 12:20? If it's genuinely urgent, they'll say so. If it's not, they'll wait. And because you're consistently shipping by noon, they'll learn to trust that waiting doesn't mean ignoring. When it works, when it breaks. Good looks like one thread completed daily with fewer reopen costs. You're finishing things instead of perpetually working on them. Your cognitive load drops because you're not tracking 5 parallel contexts. Your stress drops because you're seeing visible progress. Excellent looks like draft plus refine on the same artifact before noon. You're not just completing one stage, you're moving the entire piece from blank page to shippable version in a single morning. The speed boost is dramatic because you're maintaining context across the full cycle instead of fragmenting it across multiple days. Best looks like the full draft refined ship cycle by noon, consistently. You're known as the person who finishes what they start. Stakeholders plan around your delivery cadence. Your reputation for reliability opens doors because people trust you to close loops, not leave them hanging. But things will break. Urgent pings will arrive mid-thread. The fix is triage at 12:15. Add the request to your post-noon queue. If it's truly blocking someone, provide a default decision in your handoff note, proceeding with option A unless you flag otherwise by 2 p.m. This keeps others moving without derailing your thread. Boredom or friction will tempt you to switch. The fix is breaking the task into 5-minute starter steps or changing your physical location. Stand up, move to a different room, reset your environment. Often the friction is environmental, not cognitive. A small change restores focus. Stakeholder drive-bys will interrupt. The fix is pointing to your visible status and offering a specific alternative. Heads down until noon. Can we sync at 12:20? Most people will take the alternative. If they push, ask, does this unblock my current deliverable? If yes, take the conversation. If no, hold the boundary. The reputation you're building. Single threading isn't just about speed, it's about trust. When you finish what you start, people notice. When you ship by noon, consistently, they plan around it. When you close loops instead of leaving them open, they give you more responsibility because they know you'll handle it. Over time, this compounds. You become the person who delivers, the person who doesn't need reminders or extensions, the person who turns "I'll get it done" into "here it is." And that reputation is career leverage. Opportunities flow to finishers, not starters. Tomorrow, you'll create your current thread card. You'll close every other window. You'll set your 50-minute timer. And you'll work one thread until it's done. But even with perfect focus and a clear thread, you'll still miss noon if surprises derail you. The next chapter reveals the invisible safety net that absorbs chaos without breaking your deadline, and why most people never build it. Chapter 7, Buffer Ladder. You planned perfectly, and then reality showed up. The morning started exactly as designed. You blocked your deep work. You defined your outcome. You single-threaded the proposal draft. Everything was on track. And then at 10:15, you realized you need approval on the budget numbers before you can finalize Section 3. You sent the message. You're still waiting. It's 11:30, and the person you need hasn't responded. And your noon deadline is now 25 minutes away with a gaping hole in the middle of your deliverable. This is the pattern that kills noon shipping. Not laziness, not poor planning. Variance. The unpredictable delays that ambush even the best designed mornings. A stakeholder who's in back-to-back meetings. A dependency you didn't see until you were halfway through. A technical glitch that eats 15 minutes. A clarification that should have taken 2 minutes but required a call. You can't eliminate variance, but you can absorb it. And the tool that absorbs it is something most people never build. Buffers. Not one big buffer at the end that you pray you won't need. A ladder of small buffers distributed across your morning, designed to catch delays before they cascade into disaster. The armor you're missing. Think of your morning as a tightrope. No margin for error. One misstep and you fall. That's how most people operate. They pack their calendar edge to edge, assuming everything will go according to plan. And when it doesn't, they scramble. They skip the refine stage. They ship something half-baked, or they miss noon entirely and tell themselves they'll do better tomorrow. Now, imagine the same tightrope, but with a safety net every 10 feet. You can still fall, but you don't hit the ground. The net catches you, you reset, and you keep moving. That's what buffers do. They're not permission to slack off. They're professional risk management. They acknowledge that mornings are probabilistic, not deterministic, and they build in the slack needed to handle the inevitable surprises. Queuing theory, the math behind how work flows through systems, is brutally clear on this. Variability kills throughput. When every step in a process is packed tight with zero slack, a single delay propagates through the entire chain. The delay compounds. What should have been a 5-minute hiccup becomes a 30-minute crisis because there's no room to absorb it. Buffers are slack. And slack is what converts chaos into calm delivery. It's the difference between shipping by noon with 10 minutes to spare and shipping at 12:47 in a panic, apologizing for being late. The ladder you'll build. Tomorrow morning, you'll design a 3-tier buffer ladder. Micro buffers between major steps, a macro buffer before the deadline, and latency mapping to front-load the risky dependencies so delays happen while you're still advancing other work. Micro buffers are small, 5 to 10 minutes, and they sit between your major blocks. After deep work, before refine, 5-minute buffer. After refine, before ship, 10-minute buffer. These aren't breaks, they're shock absorbers. If deep work runs 5 minutes long, the buffer catches it and you still start refine on time. If you finish deep work early, you use the buffer to reset, hydrate, or check for critical messages. Either way, the next stage starts when it's supposed to. The macro buffer is bigger, 20 to 30 minutes, and it sits right before noon. This is your contingency reserve. If a dependency runs late, you have time to resolve it. If you discover a gap in your work at 11:20, you have time to fill it. If everything goes perfectly, you use the macro buffer for light polish or to get a head start on an afternoon task. But you guard it fiercely. No new scope enters the macro buffer. It's for contingency and polish only. The ladder structure is what makes this work. A single 35-minute buffer at the end is brittle. If you need it, you use all of it, and if you don't, it feels like wasted time. But when you distribute that same 35 minutes across the morning, 5 here, 10 there, 20 at the end, you create multiple safety nets. Small delays get caught early, big delays get absorbed by the macro buffer, and you ship by noon consistently, even when things don't go perfectly. Front-loading the risk. Here's the move most people miss. Not all tasks are created equal. Some tasks are self-contained. You control the inputs and the timeline. Other tasks have latency. They depend on someone else's response, and you can't finish until they reply. If you sequence tasks randomly, you'll hit the latency tasks late in the morning when there's no time left to wait. If you sequence them intelligently, you hit the latency tasks first, send the clarification pings early, and work on self-contained tasks while you wait for replies. This is latency mapping. At 8:30, before you start deep work, you scan your outcome and identify any step that requires external input, a budget approval, a design decision, a data pull from another team. You tag those steps with an L for likely latency. Then you reorder your morning to tackle the L-tagged items first. At 8:30, you send the clarification pings. Not vague questions, specific prompts with yes-no answers and default decisions. Need approval on the $50 budget for Section 3 by 11. If I don't hear back, I'll proceed with the $45 conservative estimate. This does two things. First, it gives the recipient a clear deadline and a low-friction way to respond. Second, it gives you a default path so you're not blocked if they don't reply. While you wait for responses, you work on the self-contained tasks. Draft the sections you can finish without input. Build the parts of the model that don't depend on external data. By the time replies arrive, or by the time you hit your default decision threshold, you've already made significant progress. The latency didn't block you because you worked around it. The buffer menu you'll keep. Here's the problem with buffers. If you finish a stage early and reclaim buffer time, your brain will try to fill it with new scope. I have 10 extra minutes. Let me add another chart. I finished refining early. Let me rewrite the intro one more time. This is scope creep in disguise, and it's how buffers get eaten. The fix is a buffer menu, a pre-written list of tiny polished tasks that are safe to do if you reclaim time. Run spell check. Verify all links work. Double-check the math in Table 2. Format headers consistently. These tasks improve quality without expanding scope. They're bounded, low risk, and genuinely useful. And because you define them in advance, you're not making a decision in the moment when your judgment is weakest. When you finish deep work 5 minutes early, you consult the buffer menu. Pick one task, do it, then move to the next stage. You don't brainstorm new ideas. You don't second-guess your structure. You execute a pre-approved micro-improvement and keep the conveyor belt moving. The buffer menu also prevents the guilt of wasted time. If you finish refining at 11:10 and your ship block doesn't start until 11:30, you have 20 minutes of macro buffer. Instead of sitting idle or inventing busy work, you pull from the menu. You're using the time productively without jeopardizing the deadline. The scripts that save you. Latency mapping only works if your clarification pings are fast and clear. Vague questions get vague answers or no answers. Specific prompts with defaults get decisions. That's why you'll build templates for the common scenarios. Template 1. Need decision on X by time. If I don't hear back, I'll proceed with Y. This works for binary choices, budget amounts, design directions, scope questions. The recipient knows exactly what you need and exactly what happens if they don't respond. Most of the time, they'll respond. Occasionally, they won't, and you'll proceed with your default. Either way, you're not blocked. Template 2. Confirming assumption. Reply only if incorrect. Otherwise, I'll move forward. This works for low-stakes confirmations. You're stating your understanding and giving them an easy out if you're wrong. Silence equals agreement, which keeps you moving. You'll also keep a visible assumptions list, a running document of decisions you've made in the absence of input. Assumed $45 budget per email sent 8:30. Assumed Q3 launch per roadmap discussion last week. This list serves two purposes. First, it de-risks your work. If someone challenges a decision later, you can point to the documented assumption and the timestamp. Second, it gives you confidence to keep moving when replies are slow. You're not guessing. You're proceeding with stated assumptions that others had the chance to correct. Guarding the macro buffer. The macro buffer is sacred. It exists to absorb surprises and enable final polish, not to accommodate scope expansion. When you hit 11:20 and realize you have 30 minutes of buffer left, your brain will whisper, "You could add that extra section. You could build that additional chart. You could make this even better." Resist. The macro buffer is insurance, not opportunity. If you've met your acceptance criteria and you have buffer time remaining, you do one of three things. 1. Pull from the buffer menu for light polish. 2. Run your commit pass early and ship ahead of schedule. 3. Use the time to get a head start on an afternoon task, but only after you've shipped the morning outcome. What you don't do is expand scope. New ideas go on the version 1.1 list. Enhancements wait until afternoon. The macro buffer protects the deadline, and protecting the deadline protects your reputation. When the system breaks, buffers will get eaten by scope creep if you're not disciplined. You'll finish deep work early, feel good about the extra time, and decide to add just one more thing. The fix is freezing scope during buffer time. The acceptance criteria were set at 9 a.m. They don't change. Extras go on the V1.1 list. The buffer is for contingency and polish, not expansion. Stakeholder replies will come late. You'll send a clarification ping at 8:30 with an 11 deadline, and the reply will arrive at 11:42. The fix is default decisions. At 11, if you haven't heard back, you document your assumption and proceed. When the late reply arrives, you either confirm you were aligned or note the correction for version 1.1. You don't reopen the work and miss noon. Idle time will feel wasteful. You'll finish refining at 11, have 30 minutes of macro buffer, and feel guilty for not doing more. The fix is reframing. Buffers aren't wasted time. They're the reason you're shipping on time. Pull from the buffer menu if you want to stay productive, but don't invent new scope just to fill the space. The calm you're creating. Buffers aren't about going slower, they're about going steadier. When you build slack into your morning, delays stop being disasters. A 5-minute overrun doesn't cascade into a missed deadline. A late reply doesn't trigger panic. You absorb the variance, adjust, and keep moving. Over time, this steadiness compounds. You hit noon consistently, even on chaotic days. Your stress drops because you're not constantly scrambling. Your quality rises because you have time for the commit pass instead of shipping in a rush. And your reputation solidifies because people see you deliver reliably, regardless of what the morning throws at you. Tomorrow, you'll draw your buffer ladder. You'll send your clarification pings at 8:30. You'll tag latency tasks and front-load them. You'll build your buffer menu, and you'll guard your macro buffer like it's the most valuable 30 minutes of your week. Because it is. But even with buffers in place and dependencies mapped, you'll still waste time if you're polishing the wrong version. The next chapter reveals the 2-pass strategy that cuts rework in half and doubles feedback speed, and why shipping rough is smarter than waiting for perfect. Chapter 8, Version and Handoff. You're waiting for perfect. and perfect is waiting forever. It's 11:45. You've been polishing the proposal for the last 90 minutes. The structure is solid, the arguments are clear, the data is accurate, but you keep finding things to tweak. A word that could be stronger, a transition that could be smoother, a chart that could be slightly more elegant. You tell yourself you're almost done, but almost done has been your status for the last 45 minutes. Meanwhile, the person who needs this proposal is sitting idle. They're waiting to review it, provide input, and move their part of the project forward. But they can't do any of that because you're still polishing. And when you finally send it at 12:23, 23 minutes late, they're in a meeting. They won't see it until 2 p.m. They won't review it until 3 p.m. Their feedback won't arrive until 4 p.m. And by then, you're deep in other work, so you won't incorporate their changes until tomorrow morning. What should have been a same-day cycle just became a 2-day cycle. Not because the work was hard, because you chased perfect instead of shipping useful. The two-pass advantage. Here's the shift that changes everything. You stop trying to nail it in one pass. Instead, you split the work into 2 distinct stages, draft and refine, with a critical checkpoint in between. Version 1 by 10:30, feedback by 11, polish from 11:15 to 11:45, ship at 11:50. This isn't about lowering standards, it's about optimizing the system. A single long pass feels efficient. You sit down, work straight through, and emerge with a polished product. But it's actually wasteful because you're polishing in the dark. You don't know if your structure is right. You don't know if your assumptions are aligned. You don't know if the recipient even needs the level of detail you're providing. So you polish everything, just in case, and half of that polish turns out to be wasted effort. The two-pass model flips this. You draft fast and rough, getting the core ideas and structure down without worrying about elegance. Then you ship version 1 early, not to the world, but to the person who needs to review it. You ask 2 or 3 targeted questions, you get quick feedback, and then you use that feedback to guide your polish pass. You're not guessing what needs improvement, you know. You're not polishing everything, you're polishing what matters. This approach surfaces misalignments when they're cheap to fix. If your structure is off, you find out at 10:30 when you can still pivot, not at 4 p.m. when you've already invested 6 hours. If your assumptions are wrong, you correct them during the polish window, not after you've shipped a final version that misses the mark. Early visibility prevents late surprises, and late surprises are what kill velocity. The V1 checkpoint. Tomorrow morning, you'll schedule a hard checkpoint at 10:30. This isn't a suggestion, it's a calendar block labeled V1 checkpoint, send draft. When 10:30 arrives, you stop drafting. You don't finish the sentence you're on. You don't add one more chart. You stop, package what you have, and send it. Version 1 doesn't need to be beautiful. It needs to be complete enough to evaluate. If you're drafting a proposal, V1 includes the key sections with rough content, budget, timeline, risks, even if the language is clunky. If you're building a model, V1 includes the core calculations and assumptions, even if the formatting is raw. If you're creating slides, V1 includes the main points and data, even if the design is basic. The standard for V1 is, can the reviewer tell if I'm on the right track? If yes, it's ready to send. If no, you need another 15 minutes to fill the critical gaps. But you don't polish. Polishing happens in the second pass, after you have feedback. When you send V1, you include 2 or 3 specific prompts. Not what do you think, but is the $50 budget in the right range? Are these the top 3 risks you'd want highlighted? Does the timeline align with your expectations? Specific questions get specific answers. Vague questions get vague feedback or no feedback at all. You also include a response deadline. Need your input by 11 to finalize for noon ship. This creates urgency without pressure. The recipient knows you're on a tight timeline and they know their feedback window is short. Most people will respond quickly when the ask is clear and bounded. If they don't, you proceed with your stated assumptions and document them in the final handoff. The Polish window. Between 11:15 and 11:45, you run your polish pass. This is where refinement happens, but it's guided refinement. You're not wandering through the document looking for things to improve. You're addressing the feedback you received and checking your work against the acceptance criteria you set at 9 a.m. If the feedback says the budget is too high, you adjust it. If the feedback says risk 3 isn't relevant, you swap it. If the feedback says the timeline needs more detail, you add milestones. You're making targeted improvements based on real input, not hypothetical concerns. You're also running a final check against your acceptance criteria. Does the proposal include budget, timeline, and risks? Yes. Are the 3 insights clear in the analysis? Yes. Is the recommendation actionable? Yes. If all criteria are met, you're done. If one is missing or weak, you fix it. But you don't add criteria mid-polish. The standard was set at 9 a.m., and it doesn't change. The polish window is time-boxed. At 11:45, you stop polishing, regardless of whether you think you could make it better. Better is infinite. Good enough is defined by your acceptance criteria. If you've met the criteria and incorporated the feedback, the work is shippable. You move to the final stage. The handoff that moves others. At 11:50, you ship, but you don't just attach the file and hit send. You include a handoff note, a short, structured message that gives the recipient everything they need to act immediately. The handoff note has 4 parts. First, what's done. Attached is the finalized proposal covering budget, timeline, and top 3 risks. This confirms scope and sets expectations. Second, what decisions were made. Proceeded with $45 budget per your feedback, assumed Q3 launch per roadmap discussion. This documents the path you took and the assumptions you relied on. Third, what's next and who owns it. Next step, your approval by 2 p.m. so we can move to contracting. This creates a clear handoff and prevents the work from stalling. Fourth, what you need and by when. If you have concerns, flag them by 2 p.m., otherwise we'll proceed. This structure eliminates ambiguity. The recipient knows what they're looking at, why decisions were made, what they need to do, and when they need to do it. There's no guessing, no rereading the thread to figure out context, no delay while they wait for you to clarify. They can act immediately, which means downstream work starts the same day. The handoff note also protects you. If someone questions a decision later, you can point to the documented assumptions and the feedback window they had. If work stalls, you can point to the clear next step and owner. The note creates accountability on both sides, which keeps the system moving. The lies you'll tell yourself. Your brain will resist shipping V1. It will tell you that version 1 equals low quality, and low quality damages your reputation. But V1 doesn't equal low quality. It equals visible progress and alignment. You're not shipping garbage. You're shipping a complete enough draft to get feedback while there's still time to act on it. That's professionalism, not sloppiness. Your brain will also insist that stakeholders want perfect. They don't. They want confidence and cadence. Confidence that you're on the right track. Cadence that lets them plan their own work. A rough draft at 10:30 that they can course correct gives them more confidence than a polished version at 2 p.m. that might be heading in the wrong direction. And your brain will claim that handoffs are overhead, extra work that slows you down. But handoffs are the engine of team speed. When you hand off cleanly, the next person can start immediately. When you hand off poorly, or not at all, they wait, and waiting compounds across the team. Optimizing the whole flow is more valuable than optimizing your individual speed. Making it operational. Tomorrow morning, you'll block 10:30 on your calendar for the V1 checkpoint. You'll draft fast and rough from 8:30 to 10:30, focusing on completeness over elegance. At 10:30, you'll stop, package what you have, and send it with 2 or 3 specific questions and an 11-holled response deadline. You'll use a consistent subject line, V1, proposal draft, review by 11. This signals that it's a draft, sets the deadline, and makes it easy for the recipient to find in their inbox. You'll also attach your acceptance checklist with the items you've completed checked off. This shows progress and reminds the recipient what the final version will include. Between 11 and 11:15, you'll review the feedback. If it arrives late or is vague, you'll proceed with your best judgment and document your assumptions. From 11:15 to 11:45, you'll polish based on feedback and criteria. At 11:45, you'll stop polishing and draft your handoff note. At 11:50, you'll ship. The handoff note will follow the 4-part structure: what's done, what decisions were made, what's next, and who owns it, what you need, and by when. You'll keep it concise, 5 sentences max. Clarity beats comprehensiveness. When it works, when it breaks. Good looks like V1 by 10:45 and final ship by 12:05 with basic context. You're splitting the work into 2 passes, getting some feedback, and handing off with enough information that the recipient isn't confused. Velocity improves because you're catching misalignments earlier. Excellent looks like V1 by 10:30, final ship by 11:50, and a clear handoff note with next owner and due time. You're running the full 2-pass cycle, incorporating feedback efficiently and creating a clean handoff that starts downstream work immediately. Cycle time drops noticeably because coordination delays shrink. Best looks like downstream work beginning the same day and overall cycle time dropping 30 to 50%. The recipient gets your handoff at 11:50, reviews it over lunch, and starts their part by 1 p.m. What used to take 2 days now takes 6 hours. The compounding effect across a team is massive. But things will break. Feedback will arrive late or be too vague to act on. The fix is asking time-boxed specific questions and offering defaults. Is the budget in range? If I don't hear by 11, I'll proceed with 45Ks. This keeps you moving even when responses are slow. Scope will try to swell after V1. You'll get feedback that suggests adding 3 new sections. The fix is capturing those as version 1.1 and protecting the Noon ship. Great idea. I'll add that to the next iteration. For now, shipping what we agreed on at 9 a.m. Handoff confusion will stall downstream work. The recipient will read your message and not know what to do next. The fix is using a fixed handoff note template with explicit next step and owner. Next, your approval by 2 p.m. No ambiguity, no delay. The velocity you're unlocking. The 2-pass model isn't just faster for you, it's faster for the entire system. When you ship V1 early, you give others time to prepare. When you incorporate feedback quickly, you reduce rework. When you hand off cleanly, you eliminate restart friction. The whole flow accelerates, and acceleration compounds. Over time, this becomes your signature. You're the person who ships early drafts for alignment. You're the person who incorporates feedback fast. You're the person whose handoffs are so clear that downstream work starts immediately. And that reputation is career currency. Tomorrow, you'll schedule your V1 checkpoint. You'll draft rough and fast. You'll send version 1 by 10:30 with targeted questions. You'll polish based on feedback. And you'll ship at 11:50 with a handoff note that moves others forward. But knowing the system and running the system are 2 different things. The final chapter reveals how to make Noon shipping automatic, how to turn these moves into identity, lock in the habit, and ensure that 1 week of wins becomes a lifetime of leverage. Chapter 9. Keep winning. You now know the system. The question is, will you run it? Most people who read books like this never implement what they learn. They nod along, highlight a few passages, tell themselves they'll start Monday, and then Monday arrives and nothing changes. The inbox still pulls them in. The meetings still hijack the morning. The deliverables still slip. They know what to do, but knowing and doing are separated by a canyon most people never cross. You're going to cross it. Not because you're special, because you're going to make one decision right now that changes everything. You're going to decide that noon is the line and everything before noon is sacred. You're going to decide that shipping by noon isn't a goal, it's your identity. And identity, once claimed, is hard to abandon. the 7 moves that got you here. Let's recap what you've built. 7 moves stacked in sequence, each one amplifying the next. First, you installed the Noon Constraint, a hard public deadline that compresses scope and forces real decisions. No more, "I'll finish it today. Today ends at noon." Everything after that is bonus time, not core time. Second, you shifted to outcome-first planning. Before you start working, you define exactly what shipped looks like. 1 deliverable, clear acceptance criteria, named recipient, no ambiguity, no drift. Third, you redesigned your calendar into a production line. Deep work, refine, ship, with micro buffers between stages and a macro buffer before noon. The calendar stopped being a wish list and became a delivery system. Fourth, you enforced single threading, 1 artifact at a time until milestone or timer. No more juggling 5 half-finished projects. You finish what you start, which means you actually finish. Fifth, you built a buffer ladder, micro buffers between steps, macro buffer before the deadline, and latency mapping to front-load risky dependencies. Variance stopped being a crisis and became an expected input that your system absorbs. Sixth, you adopted the version-and-handoff model, V1 by 10:30 for feedback, polish from 11:15 to 11:45, ship at 11:50 with a clean handoff. Note that moves downstream work forward the same day. Cycle time collapsed because you stopped chasing perfect and started shipping useful. Seventh, you committed to a daily retrospective. At 12:10, you log 3 bullets: what shipped, what slipped, what you'll adjust tomorrow. Learning locks in. The system tightens. You get better every day. These 7 moves aren't theory. They're the operating system for consistent noon delivery. And consistency is what separates people who try from people who win. The power you've claimed. Here's what you've actually done by learning this system. You've taken back control of your mornings. For years, your mornings belonged to everyone else. The inbox, the meeting invites, the urgent requests. You were reactive, not proactive. You were managing other people's priorities, not advancing your own. That's over. You now own your mornings. You dictate the cadence. You decide what gets built and when it ships. Chaos still exists. It always will, but it doesn't control you anymore. It happens around you in the afternoon after you've already won the day. You've also become the person others plan around. When you ship by noon consistently, stakeholders adjust their schedules to match yours. They know that if they need something from you, it'll arrive by midday. They stop chasing you for updates because they trust the cadence. And that trust compounds. You get more responsibility, more autonomy, more leverage, because you've proven you can handle it. The afternoon optionality is real. When you ship by noon, the rest of the day is yours to allocate. Strategic thinking, learning, high-leverage conversations, or just breathing. You're not scrambling to finish what you should have shipped hours ago. You're choosing what comes next, and choice is freedom. The relationships you're strengthening. Noon shipping doesn't just change your work, it changes your relationships. Fewer surprises mean less friction. When people know what to expect and when to expect it, they relax. They stop micromanaging. They stop sending just checking in messages. They trust you to deliver, so they focus on their own work. Clearer expectations reduce conflict. When you define outcomes precisely and hand off cleanly, there's no room for misinterpretation. People know what you're delivering, what decisions you made, and what they need to do next. Ambiguity is where relationships break down. Clarity is where they strengthen. Predictable delivery compounds respect. The first time you ship by noon, people notice. The second time, they're impressed. The third time, they start planning around it. By the 5th time, it's your brand. You're the person who delivers. And people who deliver get opportunities that people who promise never see. This extends beyond work. When you're not carrying the stress of unfinished deliverables into your evenings, you're more present at home. When you're not working weekends to catch up, you have time for the people who matter. Reliability at work creates space for connection everywhere else. The leverage you're building. Ship meaningful work daily, and projects that used to take weeks now take days. You're not waiting for the perfect moment or the perfect version. You're shipping MVVs, getting feedback, iterating fast. Velocity compounds. What felt impossible on Monday is done by Wednesday. You can also say no with confidence now. When someone asks you to take on something new, you don't reflexively agree out of fear or guilt. You check your capacity. You look at your noon outcomes for the week. If there's room, you say yes and commit to a specific delivery time. If there's not, you say no, or you offer a later date. Your yes is proven and precise, which makes your no credible. This unlocks bigger initiatives. When you're not drowning in small tasks, you have bandwidth for high-leverage work. The strategic project, the skill you've been meaning to learn, the side venture you've been postponing. Noon shipping clears the deck so you can pursue what actually moves the needle. The identity that makes it automatic. Here's the secret to making this system permanent. You stop thinking of it as a system and start thinking of it as who you are. You're not trying to ship by noon, you're someone who ships by noon. That shift from behavior to identity is what makes the habits stick. Habits crystallize through repetition. The first week, you're consciously executing the moves. The second week, they start to feel familiar. By the fourth week, they're automatic. You don't think about blocking deep work, you just do it. You don't debate whether to send V1 at 10:30, you send it. The system becomes invisible because it's internalized. Routines also automate decisions, which reduces decision fatigue. When your calendar template is the same every day, you're not deciding how to structure your morning, you're executing a proven pattern. When your handoff note follows a fixed format, you're not crafting a message from scratch, you're filling in the blanks. Automation frees cognitive resources for the work that actually requires thinking. Better scoping reduces rework. As you run the system, you get better at estimating what fits in a morning. You learn to recognize scope creep before it starts. You develop an intuition for the MVV. This means less wasted effort, fewer missed deadlines, and more consistent delivery. And the positive feedback loops reinforce everything. Early wins build confidence. Confidence improves scoping. Better scoping produces more wins. Stakeholder trust grows. Trust creates social proof. Social proof reinforces the identity. The system becomes self-sustaining. Your first move tomorrow. Tonight, before you close your laptop, you'll write tomorrow's noon statement. One sentence. By 12, I will ship X to Y with Z criteria. Be specific. Name the deliverable, the recipient, and the acceptance criteria. This isn't a wish, it's a commitment. Then you'll open your calendar and block the production line. Block A, deep work, 60 to 90 minutes. Microbuffer, 5 to 10 minutes. Block B, refine, 30 to 45 minutes. Microbuffer, 5 to 10 minutes. Block C, ship, 15 to 20 minutes. Macrobuffer, 20 to 30 minutes. Label each block with a verb in the artifact. Make it visible. Make it real. You'll also tell one person what you're shipping and when. A colleague, a manager, a peer. The announcement doesn't have to be formal. A quick message works. Heads up, shipping the proposal draft to you by noon tomorrow. Public commitment transforms intention into action. The moment you hit send, your brain shifts from I should to I will. Finally, you'll set 3 alarms. T-minus 60, 1 hour before noon. T-minus 30, 30 minutes before noon. T-minus 10, 10 minutes before noon. These aren't reminders to start, they're checkpoints to confirm you're on track. At T60, you verify you're in the refine stage. At T30, you verify you're wrapping up. At T10, you run your commit pass and prepare to ship. That's it. 4 actions tonight. Noon statement, calendar blocks, public commitment, alarms. Tomorrow morning, you execute. You don't decide whether to follow the plan, you follow it. The decision was made tonight. The retrospective that locks it in. At 12:10 tomorrow, after you've shipped, you'll run a 3-minute retrospective. 3 bullets, no more. What shipped? What slipped? What will I adjust tomorrow? What shipped is your win. Name it specifically. Shipped proposal draft to Sarah covering budget, timeline, and risks. This isn't about celebrating. It's about documenting. You're building a track record, and track records create momentum. What slipped is your data. If you missed noon, why? Overscoping, late dependency, distraction? No judgment, just facts. Slips are feedback. They tell you where the system needs adjustment. What will I adjust tomorrow is your commitment to improvement. If you overscoped, tomorrow you'll cut the MVV tighter. If a dependency delayed you, tomorrow you'll send clarification pings earlier. If distraction broke your focus, tomorrow you'll enforce stricter fire breaks. The system tightens with every iteration. This daily reflection is what separates people who run systems from people who drift. Drift is passive, reflection is active. You're not hoping to get better, you're engineering it. The compounding you're starting. One noon win doesn't change your career, but one noon win repeated daily for a week changes your reputation. Repeated for a month changes your trajectory. Repeated for a quarter changes your opportunities. Repeated for a year changes your identity. Compounding works because small, consistent actions stack. Shipping by noon once is impressive. Shipping by noon 20 times in a row is a pattern. Patterns become expectations. Expectations become trust. Trust becomes leverage. The people who rise aren't the ones who have one big breakthrough. They're the ones who show up, deliver, and repeat. Day after day, week after week. No drama, no excuses, just consistent output that others can plan around. You're about to become one of those people. Not because you're more talented or more disciplined than everyone else, because you have a system that guarantees delivery, and you're committed to running it. Decide, decliver. This is the moment. Not tomorrow, not Monday. Now. You decide that noon is the line. You declare your first noon statement. You deliver by 12 tomorrow, no matter what. One win rewrites your week. You'll feel the shift immediately. The stress drops. The clarity rises. The afternoon opens up. And you'll realize that this is what control feels like. Not hoping things work out, but knowing they will because you designed them to. 1 week rewires your career. By Friday, you'll have shipped 5 outcomes. Stakeholders will have noticed. Your manager will have noticed. You'll have noticed. The pattern is undeniable. You're not the person who tries, you're the person who ships. And from there, it's just repetition. Week 2, week 3, month 2. The system becomes automatic, the identity solidifies, and the opportunities that flow to people who deliver start flowing to you. Winners ship. Losers polish forever, plan endlessly, and promise vaguely. You're done being a loser, you're a winner now, and winners ship by noon. Write your noon statement. Block your calendar. Tell one person. Set your alarms. Tomorrow at 12, you ship. And the day after that, you ship again, and again, and again. This is who you are now, someone who ships by noon, consistently, calmly, always. Go.